Hello friends, today we're doing a quick review of the Letsketch graphics drawing tablet, 8x4 by 5.6 inches. We're going to start with a brief overview of its features, then a quick unboxing, and finally a demo using the tablet. Let's get started. At $21.99, it is not quite the most affordable tablet on Amazon, but it is really close. That still goes to the previous tablet I reviewed, but this one is far more feature-rich and has a much more comfortable size. It's also a lot more designed to be used as a drawing tablet versus a controller for OSU. What this essentially means is that it has twice the sensitivity level, tilt functionality, as well as the shortcut buttons that you see on some Wacom models. And in fact, this is more equivalent to the Intuos than a baseline Wacom tablet. Though there are some notable downsides to choosing this more off-brand model versus the more mainstream, especially in terms of software, and I will be getting to that shortly. First, let's get to the unboxing. The tablet and pen itself are both made of plastic. They're not the most expensive feeling objects you'll ever touch. It's pretty evident that they were made to be as cheap as possible, but it's not as bad as you might expect. It also comes with a pen nib puller and a USB-C adapter. The puller is obviously to replace the pen tips, but I could not actually find any extra tips in the box when I opened it up. I think either it was lost in shipping or maybe they just didn't include any, but these should be pretty easy to replace regardless. The USB-C adapter is a pretty nice inclusion in this kit. Unlike the other tablet, it actually does have a replaceable cable, so in case it gets worn out, you can just put it in. And the USB-C cable can be used with phones, so you can actually use your phone as the computer for drawing. The included cable is a USB Type-B cable. Now this is an older standard and the connector is not great, but it is about 2 meters long or 6 feet. That should be long enough to get you by for plugging into a laptop or a close by desktop. But this cable is so common you should probably be able to find a longer cable if you need it. And I really cannot emphasize enough how much of a bonus this is compared to the OSU tablet I reviewed earlier. The first thing to wear out on these tablets most frequently is in fact the cable, so being able to swap it out is a huge advantage in terms of value. Unlike the other tablet, which is in fact the cheapest on Amazon, this one will probably last you a lot longer if you want to actually use it. And including the adapter as well is a pretty big advantage because over time USB Type-A, the old school square adapter you see on cords now, will get phased out in favor of USB Type-C on all devices. So it's just a nice bonus. The included instructions are fairly easy to understand. You literally just plug it in, download the driver, and then restart your computer. The website itself is not the fastest. It took almost an hour to download the driver for this tablet, and that's really not impressive, but honestly, the worst thing about it is the software. Even describing the software as clunky is a bit generous. A lot of things are still written in Chinese, and there's mistranslations all over the place. Especially if you have a unusual monitor setup like I do, where I have an ultra wide that I use as my main display. It takes a little bit of finagling to actually get it in the right position to use, but I was ultimately able to actually set it up, so at least it works. It's just not the best experience, and that's where Wacom will beat this pretty much any day of the week. The software is much more reliable, much more thought out, and probably a fair bit better supported. I'm not sure how long they'll actually update this application now that it's out, but we'll have to see for the future. For now, it's serviceable. Now, one last thing I wanted to note before we move on to the demonstration is that you can't have this installed and a Wacom driver installed at the same time. It does require you to uninstall everything Wacom before you can install this driver. And that's kind of annoying from a reviewer standpoint, but realistically you won't even notice it as a person who's just going to own this and nothing else. Now with all that said, let's get set up and get drawing. For today's demo, we're going to be doing a cute little panda animal. painted in Clip Studio Paint. The first thing I should note is that for Clip Studio Paint to work properly as a tablet, you need to set it to the tablet PC setting in the tablet settings instead of the Win tab as you'd normally have it. This is just a compatibility thing. It's like this for pretty much everything that's not Wacom. But it's just a quick setting, and that'll actually resolve all the pressure sensitivity issues you might run into with this tablet. Unlike the OSU tablet, this is really comfortable to draw on. It has a semi-rough surface, so it's not super glidey. You can actually tell that you're drawing when you're drawing with this tablet. And I didn't have to zoom in anywhere near as much just to get the job. I wasn't having the same kind of issues with cramping as I did on the other device. And the pen pressure sensitivity felt roughly equivalent to that of an Intuos from 2 or 3 years ago. It's really hard to tell any difference once you get into the 8,000 plus range. Honestly, the biggest issue I was having had nothing to do with this specific product, but rather just being used to using pen displays like my Cintiq or the iPad Pro. Over time, I could improve to the point where there'd be no difference between the two of them, but I did miss drawing on a screen. But again, this is a $20 device versus $2,000 or $3,000 for a super high-end pen display. If I was just starting out, this would be excellent. In fact, this is far better than what I had back when I was a teenager first learning how to do digital art. In terms of pressure sensitivity range, this is honestly just as good as anything I've used. Unlike some older versions of the non-Wacom batteryless pen displays, this one doesn't have any like spikes or unevenness in the pen pressure. The Chinese manufacturers that have started to rip off Wacom in this regard really have gotten to the point where you cannot tell the difference between the two of them outside of the materials and the software itself. This would honestly be my pick for a beginners-oriented tablet. It has all the same essential professional grade features like the pressure range and the tilt sensitivity, but it doesn't quite try to wow with just raw numbers. It'll get the job done. Like, plenty of artists across the last 2 decades did way more with way less. Especially if you're willing to put up with the slight learning curve of developing that eye-hand coordination from not being able to just draw directly on the screen. I didn't notice any weird line wobble like you can see in some of the WinTab tablets, like the older Surfaces or some of the manufacturer-provided pens like HP, Lenovo, and so on. All the lines are perfectly straight no matter how slow you drew. And I'd say that, at least in terms of the accuracy of putting down lines, it is equivalent to Wacom in every way. I also tested it briefly on my Android phone. I do not have a Apple iPhone presently, so I can't speak to that, but it did just work from plugging it in, and it is compatible with Clip Studio Paint on the Android phone. So, quick summary. Do I think it's worth buying? Absolutely, if you're a beginner. It's not the best, but it's very much worth the price compared to similar equivalent things from Wacom, including the Intuos, which is, for an 8x5, can be hundreds of dollars, where this one is only $20. I do think it's beginner friendly. Its software is decidedly not the best, but it'll get you by until you're ready to take on more professional level tools or know if you actually want to invest in this hobby in a big way like I have. I don't think you need expensive tools or a pen display or anything like that just to get drawing on a computer. This will do everything you need. Now, I might sometimes come off as having some kind of vendetta against Wacom or Apple or whatever expensive device manufacturer, but that's really not the case. My favorite pen display to take with me is the iPad Pro, and my preferred drawing device is the expensive giant Wacom Cintiq. But I've also been doing this for 17 years, and I feel comfortable investing that kind of money into the hobby. If you're just starting out, you really don't need to do that. And I'd hate to see someone waste their money on something that they'll just give up at some point. Hopefully not. I love seeing new artists, but from a standpoint of someone who might not know if they enjoy the process of working on a computer or not, this is a good value proposition. And that is considering the sacrifices in terms of user experience and the quality of the product. Anyway, all that's to say is, buy it if you're a newbie. It's worth it. Anywho, if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, and if you think you could learn some more from me, subscribe. I always create new art tutorial, art discussion content that is aimed directly at newbies and people who are just getting back into drawing, both digitally and traditionally. I do 2D and 3D art, and I'll talk to y'all later.